Hey, Stacey David here with Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This podcast is about all things automotive from any time, any place, and beyond. All right, let's get to it. All right, welcome to the podcast. We have a great surprise for you. We've got a great guest here today, one of my best friends in the industry, Mr. Tim Strange. Now, if you don't know who Tim is, you haven't been around the hot rod world very much. Tim is in pretty much every Hall of Fame that there is and been building cars for a long time. And he's just a great guy. And a lot of times you'll see him out announcing at some of these events as well. So a very talented guy, and we're going to talk hot rods. So Tim, welcome.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. Listen, let's start with your background, man. How did you get into hot rodding? First cars, how'd you get into it?
Well, I was lucky or cursed to grow up with my dad that was first a Harley guy.
Okay.
And he built show choppers out of the basement, and his buddies painted them and showed them local, indoor and outdoor a little bit.
Now, was he always a Harley guy or just any bikes?
I think he had a couple dirt bikes, but he was a long-haired chopper.
Okay, so he didn't do the Honda stuff or anything?
No, I think he said he might have had a Honda dirt bike, but I don't ever remember. It was before I was around or old enough to remember it. But I just always remember the Harleys and the choppers and stretched out and show bikes and flames and molded chassis. My uncle was a custom painter, and they did one together probably when I was 4.
So you grew up with it?
Yeah. And so then he got into Tri-5 Chevys at a young age, young. So that's kind of what I was around. And then for extra money, even in junior high and grade school and high school, we painted, it seemed to be a lot of square body Chevy trucks.
Oh yeah,
we
that
painted,
was a hot thing.
That was the farm truck. So we'd paint them single stage, I can't count how many.
Acrylic enamel.
Yeah, growing up in Northern Illinois, I mean, the rockers and the cab corners went out of a square body at 2 years old, I think. And, fixing bedsides and learning how to paint. But, I painted a firewall. My dad, he built nicer local show car type of stuff, but did have a couple pictures in the magazines and stuff through the years.
Now, did you just do stuff at the house, or did he have a shop, or what?
No, he was a farmer, worked for a farmer, and then we had a garage that we worked in
out of the garage.
Painted stuff in. So growing up on the farm, you learn to weld, you learn to paint. I mean, I'm not going to say paint. I'm going to say I pulled the trigger the first time on a spray gun. My dad built his second Tri-5 Chevy. He liked tilt front ends. His first 57 was a straight axle, tunnel ram, chain chrome steering wheel.
Oh yeah, I got one laying on the floor over there.
Tilt front end, velocity stacks, the whole thing. So I didn't help a whole lot on that, just being in the way in the garage and holding the light and stuff. But when he built his yellow 55 Bel Air, also tilt front end, wasn't a gasser, same thing. I had a blower scoop, but tunnel ram. The chain steering wheel went to every car that he did there for a few.
I wanted one of those so bad.
I think he still got it in a shelf at home someplace. I need to get that.
I've got one laying on a pallet over here, and everybody that comes in, especially older hot rodders, they're like, "What do you take for that steering wheel, man?" It's like, go buy one. No, I've looked forever for one.
But he had this yellow and white 55 Bel Air, and he goes, "Boy, it's time for you to learn how to paint." But I was like 9, 10 years old.
Really?
And the yellow paint come out, and I froze.
Yeah. So.
And my hand still squeezed. So it ran down the firewall.
Oh yeah.
And
then what were you shooting? Was it
painted
lacquer or acrylic enamel?
It was probably like Centauri, acrylic enamel.
Acrylic enamel.
Yeah. There was no urethane at this time.
Oh yeah.
Because I know the car was done, and we took it to the Classic Chevy Convention in Dearborn in 1981.
Okay.
So it was done before then, and then it made a couple little event coverage magazine stuff, and they wanted him to take it down the drag strip. Then they were going to give him a feature on the cover, and Mom said no.
Yeah.
Because the car was fresh. It was like, you're going to blow it up. You're going to do something stupid. And I don't think it had
You're gonna
seatbelts.
wreck it.
Because it was tunnel ram and a wicked little small block. And so he'd tell everybody, that's where my boy learned to paint. And they'd look at that big old run, not just a little run, like a circle where the gun stopped and then the drip down. And they're like, well, I hope he's getting better. But it was cool that my dad left that run on that firewall of that car.
Now, where's that car now? Any idea?
I don't know. When I was 14, he bought his own farm instead of working for other farmers, and he traded that to a local guy that bought and sold used farm equipment. So for his new farm, he traded that 55 for a used tractor, a used small planter, a used plow, and like a mower. It was a pretty good car. It wasn't going to win, a big Pros Pick award or something like that, but I mean, it was a good enough car with enough motor and cool interior and everything that guy wanted it and did a trade. So
are Tri-5s probably your favorite car then? I mean, if you have to pick a hot rod, What would Tim Strange like?
Like, say, if I had to specialize in something at my shop?
No, just for you to drive. If you want to get out and get into something and drive it, what would it be?
Well, I like everything. When I bought my first dually, which was a Ford, my second dually, which was a Ford.
Yeah.
I lived a quarter mile from my dad in Illinois at the time. I owned that Ford for 5 years before he rode in it. Because he didn't want to be in a Ford, and he didn't want any of his buddies to see him in a Ford.
That is funny.
So now I like everything, but if I'm going to pick, it's going to be a Chevy.
Okay.
And my first car that I bought when I was 8, I sold my 4-H show pigs because I'm a farm kid, and I bought a 55 150 baby blue and white for my great-great-grandpa for $100.
Wow.
Never built the car. So I want another 55 someday, and my dad's got 5.6 Tri-5s. So I'd say if I have to pick a favorite car, I'd say I lean pretty heavy towards Tri-5s. Of course, I like 32 Fords and all that.
Oh, yeah, you do everything. Yeah. Okay, out of the Tri-5s, what's your favorite? 5, 6, or 7?
Personally, I like 55 sedans, and I want another 55 sedans, and I think that my dad was always a hardtop guy.
See, I like the 55 hardtop. I just love those
But
things.
as a kid, what was my job? If you know hardtops, he closed the doors at a show. I walked and shut the flippers because the flippers never worked back then.
Yeah, they never worked right.
Yeah, and I was just a sedan guy, probably because Falfa.
Oh, absolutely. They were a lighter car if you're racing.
Yeah, and that's like the race cars were sedans and stuff. You know, the Falfa and American Graffiti had a sedan, and it was a 150, no chrome around the windows. Yeah. And then I was a big fan of Project X and Popular Hot Rodding, and it was a sedan. And then you can't like exactly the same thing as your dad. We were Tri-5 guys, but then I've had quite a few Tri-5s through the years, and my dad has a 56 Nomad that I actually took my wife to both her junior and senior prom in. He says that will be mine someday, along with probably the other Tri-5s. But he says it's actually in the farm will, the estate, that the Nomad goes to me. So I've got one sister, and she gets the vet. She wants the vet. So, yeah.
So was American Graffiti a big influence on you?
I'd say yes. They just did that anniversary, and we went to the big screen and see it. I was too young to see it when it came out.
Yeah. And
it was really cool. We got some other drag race friends and stuff to go, and we watched American Graffiti on the big screen, and it was really awesome. And now I think back about it, I told my wife that, you know, I could sit there and recite the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like she can with Grease.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
You can't watch that movie with her because she just says all the lines. I realized like when I would go cruising in high school and stuff, and I'd come home midnight, my curfew, and 9 times out of 10, I wasn't tired, so I'd put in the VCR tape. Remember them?
Oh, yeah.
And I'd watch it at least once a week, you know, half here and half there. But yeah, and then my uncle was a big car guy too. My dad, we wouldn't travel much. Like when we went in '81, that was the first time I ever stayed overnight in a hotel. Yeah. We went from northern Illinois towards Iowa side, all the way to Dearborn, Michigan, pulling that car with all the stuff to go for a week. And I remember it was floor jack and everything. The tow rig, a 78 Dodge Magnum was our tow vehicle because we didn't have a truck big enough that would go that far. We had them to pull stock trailers, but it was like a half hour to the sale barn. That was, is it going to make it, you know? But I remember we had so much crap. That car the bumper would almost drag the ground, and we had the 55 loaded backwards on the trailer.
Okay, I'm with you.
And it was like 45 mile an hour all the way to Dearborn. You know, I didn't think we was ever going to get there. Yeah, and then my uncle took me out of town to there was a big street rod show in Peoria every year, Peoria is where the Street Rod National started, and that club would still do a big show. So we'd go to that. He'd take me to...
So they were involved in that right at the beginning, the street rod world and all of that stuff.
Yeah, Peoria, Illinois, Chillicothe area was the first Street Rod Nationals ever in 1970, I think. I was born in 71.
You keep mentioning family. It's a really cool connection. Let's talk about that. How important do you think that is, that your family's involved? Carrie, she's in the industry.
Yeah.
Those of you that don't know, Carrie and Tim are like the power couple in the hot rod world.
Yeah, we won the Good Guys Trendsetter in 2002, which was young, upcoming people.
Yeah, I remember that.
Some guy named Chip got the first one, you know, Chip guy. And they called both of us on stage, and the trophy, the award has both of our names. Yeah. That's the only time in 20-some years they've done it that a husband and wife has got the Trendsetter, because she was doing upholstery. And now she works for the company that they help run Hot Rod Power Tour, the Roadkill Drags, all the Holly events. They run the Optimus series. They run stuff.
If you guys are enjoying any of those events, LS Fest, any of the Holly stuff, Roadkill stuff, Carrie Strange is the person behind that, making that happen. And I say that with a lot of confidence. I've watched her do that. Yeah. I mean, she is relentless.
Like she even built the computer program for Holly to do that. But yeah, I think the family growing up makes it a lot easier to get into the hot rod world.
Sure.
Like I started saying, my Uncle Jim Carlson took me, he was a big custom guy. I love Tri-5s, but customs are my heart. Chop tops, lead sleds, Mercs, most everything I build for myself has a custom influence to it. So he took me to all those custom camp shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was where I wanted to go next, because that's when I first met you, when I first saw your work was when you were doing those 50s lead sleds and stuff like that. And you have a great look and a great style when you do that. And I was just wondering where that came from, where that influence is, because I hear you talk about, Gene Winfield a lot, who's a friend of both of ours, who was a huge influence in that.
And I've been lucky enough that I'm good enough friends with Daryl Starbird. I can't count how many times that I've stayed at a house for overnight
or
more than a week and helped him. Actually, a year ago, I shared today on my Facebook memories, a year ago, I spent a week there with another KKWA Hall of Famer, Carl Casey, and we worked with Daryl. At that time, he was 89 years old, in his shop for a week, and we built a bubble mold. I've never been a part of a bubble top. We haven't blown the mold yet, the glass, the plastic yet, but helping him build that mold, it was a lifetime memory. I mean, I wasn't a sports guy. And I was like, to me, there was these guys, I always say, who's the guy with the shoe?
Michael Jordan, yeah. I have to think. It's not
these guys are my Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
The Winfields, and then the street rod guys, the Brizzios, and Fat Jack Robinson, and Boyd Coddington, and all those guys. And in my career, all I wanted to do was build a car to get in a magazine.
That was the deal.
And now I'm lucky I've been in over 350 some magazines around the world, and now I get these guys that I looked up for, I can call them on my cell phone. It's the hot rod world and the custom world. It's a pretty cool industry to be a part of.
Can't get enough gears? Make sure to check out the Tales of a Gearhead podcast, where Stacey brings a lifetime of automotive knowledge, friendships, and expertise to the listener. Also, check out our social media channels for updates and videos of Gears projects, as well as special contests, giveaways, and events. If you have a vehicle you want to enter into What Are You Working On, go to staceydavid.com and submit it. There's also the online store and tons of other Gearhead information that will encourage you to get out there, build something, and go drive it.
And I'll tell you what, and that's really cool, because you are a great ambassador for that industry. And the thing is, I mean, it's hard to look at yourself that way, because in your mind, you're still that kid, building stuff. And these other guys are the legends. But what's happened is that now it has transcended to where you're one of the legends. Isn't that weird?
I'm getting old. That's what that means.
Well, that's kind of what that means, but it also means you've earned a reputation to where people are looking up to you and looking at the stuff you've done. And you handle that really well. Not everybody does that.
And then I do race announcing, because it's just a break. Otherwise, I'll be.
How'd you get into that? Well, obviously you talk well, so.
It's weird. BMX brought me out of my shell as a teenager. I was I was one of those little kids that would hide behind my mom at the car shows. Wouldn't talk for nothing. And people didn't think I had a tongue there for a while. I was so quiet. And now Carrie's like, could you please go back in your shell a little bit? Just shut up. And I don't know. It's just, I got to a point that I had a couple little bit parts on little TV shows. Well, we were on VC Tech, right?
Yeah, we did that
advisory board.
Yeah.
That's when we first hung out and got to know each other a little bit more. And you were telling me the ins and outs.
Doug LaRue, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't regret doing it.
Let's talk about, we're shifting gears down into, you got your shop. What is probably some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about building their own sort of car or coming to a custom builder that you run into, that you wish people would know ahead of time? Is it just a misconception on the time it takes? Because it's all of these things. I mean,
time and money.
And expecting, filet mignon on a hamburger budget.
I call it the buffet thought process. You go to a buffet, you get 3 plates of food. I'm eating all this. No, you're not. You're eating a plate and a half of it. It's the same thing. As I look around the shop, I mean, they want that thing with the crazy suspension and the fuel injection. And there was a guy, he had a plasma table company that brought it into the studio. And I started talking to him for my shop about building him it was a C1 vet, 58, 960 around in there. Oh, he wanted one-off wheels. He wanted one-off fuel injection, something that nobody's ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
This and that, and a chassis swap. And I'm like, okay, well, I started sending him stuff. And of course, I was going to work partial of the trade. I was going to get a plasma table from my shop. Yeah. And we started talking, and I reached out to some friends that did one-off fuel injections. And I was like, you're looking at X amount of money. He goes, I don't think I want to spend that much on the whole car. He seriously said that. Yeah. And I'm like,
you have no idea.
Dude, a one-off set of wheels is this much money. Just your parts for your chassis, what are you thinking? So obviously we didn't build him a car because he had no idea. He was new to the car world, came into the TV studio, got these big shiny eyes, and had no idea. I says, let's go to an auction and buy a car. He's like, but I want my own car. Buy a car at an auction, change the wheels, maybe get a new interior put in it next year, fix everything that's wrong with it because it's an auction car. A lot of just auction cars are not that good. So I says, I'll even go to the auction for a little bit of money and go with you and help you pick out a decent car. But we can't test drive it. It's an auction car. So
I gave that exact advice to a guy yesterday on an email. Same sort of deal. I learned that early on, that very same thing. I had a custom shop there at the house. This was before doing trucks or anything like that. And a guy across the street had an old Mercedes sedan. And my shop was in a big 3-bay barn. And he was like, I'll tell you what, I need the barn painted. He said, you paint my Mercedes, I'll paint your barn. And I was like, okay. Because I'm looking at it from a distance. I said, what kind of paint job do you want? He said, I just want color on it. Okay. So he rolls in there. I get over and look at the car. There's rust holes here and there. And I'm like, oh, no, no. So I go back to him and I said, and he goes out and paints the barn with his wife in a day.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, then of course he wants a really nice paint job, all the gaps, right? No, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I told him, I said, listen, tell me what you want for painting the barn. He's like, well, I got $1,000. He was like, I can't even get the materials just to do your car. And this was back then.
Yeah.
And I just paid him, and because he had no idea the value of what he was getting.
Yeah, I was trying to do a trade with a guy that he had his construction company, and he had to put the car on hold for family reasons. And he was going to come take some labor off this. I mean, a full on build. He was going to do my roof for my shop. I've tried that a couple times with other guys, and I still don't have my shop done. My roof's not done. And then I had one guy look at it, and he goes, I was going to paint his truck and do a nice job on it. He's like, well, you need way more work than what a paint job's cost. I says, we haven't even talked to what my paint jobs cost. I bought a gallon of solid gray the other day, base coat. At my discount, still $1,200. That's no reducer, no activator, no nothing. I mean, the last few paint jobs I did, we had to order $10,000 just in materials with the primers and the sealers, and that's not counting masking tape, paper, rubbing compounds, and it's ridiculous. They were talking about getting into hot rods with family. That's how it helps a family guy get in it. Like, my dad helped me get cars cheap, and I know I've got other buddies. It's like, oh, they gave them a Model A body, their uncle, their grandpa, or something like that. But for a kid to get into the hot rod world now, to build something decent, you don't build anything that I see here, your first car.
No.
You start low.
And that's where we all started.
Yeah. Started with mini trucks. It was back in the day.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, I bought my 64 Chevelle SS 283 4-speed car when I was 14. It was my third car at that time. Buying and selling and doing farm work and everything. I remember I bought that for $3,200. Seen it on the way to Cordova drag strip for the World Series. Went back the next day and bought it. I had some money. I had about half the money, and my dad was going to give me a little bit of money and co-sign the loan at the bank. I'm 14. And it was, small block 283, 4-speed, rally wheels, decent red paint. Wasn't real straight, but it was a pretty solid car. And I remember sitting at the bank, and my dad says, you sure you want to do this? Small farmer bank. My dad still banks this same farmer bank. And he goes, you get one cosign your entire life. He says, I won't help you to buy a house. I won't help you to buy a shop. You get one. And you're 14. You want to use that up right now? Hell yeah, I'm getting a Chevelle. I used that. we went and got that Chevelle. Yeah. But my dad helped me that way. But now I always ask people how they get into hot rods, and very seldom do you come across somebody, and I hear them on other podcasts and stuff, that somebody in their family, an uncle or whatever. I mean, me and my wife started dating. Her family at least did demolition derby cars. Okay. Well, then they helped guys at the stock car dirt track. And it's weird for me to meet somebody. It's like, so what's your family do? What are they into? If they're they just go fishing. If nobody in their family has a car, a cruise night car, a drag car, a motorcycle, a demo car, stuff, it's just weird to me because that's just everybody that I grew up around. Somebody always had something. Even my grandpa that was a preacher and had a small construction business, he had Austin Healey in the garage.
Oh, yeah.
We never got it out on the road.
Austin Healey 3000?
I don't remember what it was. I was like 7 years old. And I remember riding around. He had an Austin Healey, and my grandma had something like that. There was something else.
A little MGA or?
Something like that. But again, we drove them around the barnyard in the pasture. They never made it on the road. So
That's awesome.
at least they had something they tinkered with for a while. But,
sure.
you know, his son, my uncle, was a Harley guy. It's just weird that if we come across somebody, what do you do with your spare time if you don't, you know?
I had a similar experience when I was growing up. My dad was a cop, so he didn't like those hot rod guys. So he and I were, you know, he liked country music, I like rock and roll. So, you know, we have a great relationship, but we just like different stuff. And senior year, you know, they would help us out with that first car. And there was this Model A coupe sitting over there, because I was an American Graffiti fan. I wanted that 32, and I couldn't find a 32, so the Model A is as close as I could get. And it was sitting there, piece of junk at this service station. The guy wanted like $1,200 for it, and it was just ragged. But it had a small block Ford in it, and it was, you know, fenderless, primer. And my dad looks at me, and he goes, "Is that the car?" Because every time we'd go out, I'd say, "Hey, Dad, you know, why don't we go this way?" And it kept going by that, and he noticed that. So finally, he got out there with Mom, and he said, "You like that car?" I said, I love that car." And he was like, "I'm going to buy it for you." He said, "But this is your car. This is your transportation." He said, "If it breaks down, it's on you." He said, "I look at that car and I see the biggest piece of crap I'll ever see." He said, "I don't know what you see in it. I don't understand it, but you love it. So we're going to invest in you." And I was like, still get goosebumps thinking about it.
He was helping you support your dream, though,
Yeah,
so that was cool.
So I went down the road with that. And then he had a friend in high school that he had graduated with who was a fantastic fabricator, that he got me with him and says, "You need to apprentice my son because he's into this stuff." And Jim was just that guy. First of all, he told the best jokes. But he was the first guy I saw working metal and lead, and I just learned everything from him. You have to learn it from somebody.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing, you know.
And you can stumble through and learn by mistakes, but it helps you learn.
Yeah.
I mean, me and my dad tinkered in the garage and painted cars, so we learned that. And
Absolutely.
a good friend that he played softball with was, you know, body man, and still friends with that guy. And then as soon as I was 16, I started at the local collision shop that was right down from the high school.
Sure.
Well, what they were known for was Corvettes and Concours vets and custom painting. So I learned custom painting, and then he got out of Corvettes and got into bass boat fishing, tournament fishing.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, here comes all the bass boats. So I'm in high school. I learned how to blend in boat flake and candies and all the
big
stripes.
flake, yeah.
You know, we had a thing that took the motors off and tilted them, so you didn't have to lay underneath of them, so they stuck a tree through the bottom of the boat. And there was another guy that worked there, just a small town, body town's like 800 people.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from Reggie Ansu, and I'm still friends with him. And Dave Lindquist, he's since passed away because he was one of them drinking, smoking, you know, a cigarette hang out of his mouth while he's painting almost.
Yeah,
and,
like Bill Hines.
Yeah. But I learned so much from those guys.
All right, that's our show for today, which means you need to get out there and start working on something. Spend some time turning wrenches. You'll love it. Also, make sure to check out our website, staceydavid.com. We got all kinds of new products, some great stuff there you're going to love. Also, make sure you check out our social media. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all at Official Stacey David. Our social media is where you're going to find all the bonus content, the giveaways, the contests, the trivia. We even have extra viewer projects that we show everybody to focus on what you're working on. YouTube is where you're going to be able to find all of our episodes of Gears, past, present, and future. I know a lot of you guys ask about that. That's where you can see them. All right, that's all we got. We'll see you next time.